Hello everyone, this is Grandmaster Denes Boros, and this is my greatest losses session. So today I'm going to talk about session. So today I'm going to talk about a few of my games that are not necessarily painful, but actually ones that I learned a lot from. But before I start, I want to show this position right here, which was played in Gaziantep. But my first question is, if my opponent was from the Philippines, can you guess who my opponent was? Yes. Wesley So, that's correct. Now the only thing we need to guess is which color he was. And he was white, yes, indeed. So when you'll see this position, you'll see that it looks very plain and dull. And I think you're not even wrong. I shouldn't be worse with black. You'll see how it will end. And quite painfully for me. All right, so before that, I want to show a different game that I played. And that was against Quang Liem, the same tournament. But before I start this one and get into this tangent over and over again, I want to say that the Under-20 World Championship is a very important event. When you play there, you'll meet all the future champions who will play for super tournaments, Grand Slams, and Olympic teams. When I was playing in Gaziantep, I played Quang Liem, who's a 2700 and one of the best Vietnamese players. Also, I played Wesley So, who we all know who he is. Again, it's very interesting to point out that the winners of these events were usually a good sign that they're going to become a pro in chess or one of the top 10 players. Alright, so let's start with my game with Quang Liem first. This was actually much later after the Wesley game. I won 2 games in a row, then I lost, and after that I was playing Quang Liem. So I really wanted to catch up, because if I win this round, in the last round I would be white, and we'll have chances for some good places. Alright, so he plays this tricky Reti. D4, C6, D takes C4. Is anyone familiar with this idea? Yes?
The Slav.
Yeah, it is the Slav. E3. But can anyone guess my next move? It's kind of a funky, tricky move that I played at that time. It's not too good, but it's not even that great. Yeah?
F6.
F6? No, not that bad. I didn't want to resign on move 3. Now, I really didn't want to play a6 either. So I just played bishop e6. Now, obviously, I was hoping for knight g5, which will not happen. Why would knight g5 be a horrible blunder? Yeah.
Queen to a5?
Yep. And sadly, you can't defend that knight. I could take. Obviously, I wasn't expecting that to happen. Because bishop e6 is still a viable line. It's not a bad move. It's a tricky one. Just it has this extra trick in.
So you're going to play g6, knight f6, bishop g6.
Yeah. So, for example, knight c3 is the main line here. I can go knight f6. And for example, you can even play like here, knight g5. You're chasing away my bishop. Go bishop g4, f3, and now I have a choice. I can go here, which is quite normal, takes an e6, and this knight is just as funny as this bishop on h5. But it's quite playable for both. Now, the other idea is bishop c8, which is kind of tricky, because if you take e6, what black is claiming here that you're making like weird moves, e3, f3, and the knight on g5, and I just played the normal queen's gambit, and I'm going to play c5 in the future. And this is also interesting. Probably slightly better for white, but it's not so bad. The other line, and this is the main line of this variation, is a4. Now, as you mentioned, g6 is the idea. Knight g5, bishop d5, e4. Seemingly they're trapping my bishop, but I have one tricky idea that saves the day. How can I save myself and the bishop's life somewhat? So if you cannot move, can't do anything, always think about counterattacking.
H6.
H6, yes. And takes, because if the knight moves, we take the pawn. Otherwise, he has to take the bishop, but then we can counter-take his knight. Takes, knight takes c6, takes, bishop g7, and this is roughly equal, even though white has the bishop pair. Black is going to castle soon, and his position will be all right. Now, this line is very rare, even when this was played in 2008. So he played queen c2, which is quite solid. Now, I could play b5 here, which I didn't do. But the reason I didn't want to do this, I felt that a4, and after taking, and maybe even a potential b3, like for example, if I do something terrible, like say here, this queen e4 ideas can become real issues. And I'm totally lost here. So even though obviously I wouldn't play g6, bishop g7, but you get the idea that I have to be really careful not to lose quickly if I play b5. So I said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm just developing my knight. Takes, takes, takes. And we have to evaluate this position a little bit. What did white achieve in this position? Better development, more space. These pawns, we have two center pawns. I barely have one. And more pieces out. Now, good for me that the position is relatively closed. And I played the normal, well, actually not the normal, quite brave b5 move. Not sure this is great, actually. In fact, I should have tried this idea, queen c7, castles. And now I have a really nice little move here, which is one of the themes of the Slav variation. Can anybody guess what move I should have played here? b5, how does that? Oh, e5, sorry. Correct, e5. And this is actually how I should have played, because if d5, which is a bad move, we have this knight b6 trick, double attacking the pawn and the queen. And this is good for black. And even if they take, knight takes e5, you need not be scared of this pin, because I have bishop d6, and my next move is going to chase away the queen. And castles, and this is really good for black. Now, obviously, when I played this bishop e6 sideline, I wasn't really familiar with the plans. That's why you should be really familiar with the structures you play. Because if you know, I would have been able to find this plan of queen c7, castles e5, and I would have a really good game. Instead, I played b5. Now, this is kind of a daring move. I'm trying to grab more space, but the downfall is that this pawn will get weak, and the b5 pawn will get weak as well. So that's not good. He played queen e2.
Wait, isn't the pawn hanging?
Well, if I take, how can I punish it? I had a trick up my sleeve if he would have taken on c6. Rook c8, then I'll take your bishop. These are rare traps, but here it actually works. So this would have been a nice way to win, but obviously a soon-to-be 2700 player will not fall for this one. So played queen e2, e6, knight f6. Now I saw nothing better, and if you see nothing better, at least castle as quickly as possible. e4, bishop e7, a6, it just defended my pawns. So if you look at this position, who would we rather be?
Well, if black got in a c5, I would prefer to be black.
Mm-hmm.
If white can keep the c pawn at c6, I would definitely prefer to be white.
So you're saying that you'd be fine with being black if you manage to play c5, but if not, then you'd rather be white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks
So
like structure from semi-Slav.
yeah, so this is kind of like a semi-Slav structure, yes. Although the bishops are missing, which is kind of good for me, but my position is still passive. So he developed his knight, castle, rook c1, all standard stuff, h6. I like this move that I played because I give a little bit of space for my king, and that can be useful. Rook c8, e5, knight d5, knight takes d5. And now I'm at choice. I either take on h4, but then I will have some issues with my pawns, or I take with the e pawn on d5. Notice that I can't take with the c pawn because they take on c8 and I lose a piece. Can't do that. So we're at choice now. We'll have to figure out a way to continue our play. What would you guys do? Yeah.
Bishop takes h4.
Bishop takes h4. And why not e takes d5? Why did you choose bishop takes h4?
Because the idea is if you do play c5, that d pawn is going to be weak.
It's a good point. So if you have a pawn on d5, then c5 is also a weakening move. Yeah.
Yeah. The difference is if the white e pawn was on e3, well then it would be acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's since it's on e5, well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the same way I also rejected e takes d5 outright because I will have a terrible structure and I would just be worse for sure. So said, okay, hell may follow, but I'll take on h4. Knight b4, very nice move. He's immediately counterattacking. Now if I play c5, I'll lose the a6 pawn, so I didn't want to do that. Played something that I wouldn't want to do, but I had no choice. How can I defend my guys? It's not a pretty move, but you have to make it sometimes. Yes.
Knight to b8.
Yes. Not proud of it, but you have to defend your pawns. So that kind of prompted him to jump on my pawns. Played queen e4, which is a nice centralizing move. And actually I'm quite happy the way I started defending here. So it's a double attack. You have to do something about this. Because if we don't, we're going down badly. So I played bishop g5. So either you start exchanging stuff. So let's say you take. He didn't do that. Take. I can take even h takes. But even if queen takes, let's see, say take. Take. I have some counterplay. I'm worse, that's for sure, but I'm still fighting. This queen is active. I'm in the game. Probably that's the reason he didn't take on g5. He said, no, I want you to stay passive. Played rook c3. And to be honest, rook c3 does deserve an exclamation mark because it holds the position together, keeps pressure on my position, and, you know, I would nod and say, yes, you're still better. But now I've found a very nice tricky idea, which almost saves the day for me. Now if I play queen d7, they'll take on g5 and I might get mated. So I can't do that exactly. So I have to use the fact that this queen on e4 is a little bit vulnerable. So my next move will be a pseudo sacrifice. I will temporarily sacrifice a pawn. But not with c5, and I don't go crazy with f5 either. So we already know that this queen is a bit loose, right? On e4, I told you. The other thing, there's only one more piece that's kind of loosey-goosey in white's position. Which piece is that?
The b4 knight.
The b4 knight. So I'm going to pester that knight a little bit.
Queen a5.
Queen a5, as I told you, I'll play a3, and that's not doing too much. I played Queen e7. And this is a tricky move, and in fact, Quang falls for my trick here. There's two moves that white could play here. Taking the pawn or not taking the pawn. Which one could be the right solution? Yeah.
I would play knight d3.
And you should play knight d3, yes. Now, probably he got tempted and missed my idea, but knight d3 would be like a huge advantage for him. It's slow squeeze, and probably, you know, I'm trying to hold this position, but the odds are not in my favor. So, but he took on c6. But now I have a very nice tactical idea that I spotted, and actually should have saved me this game. But
you
I
blocked her
didn't.
in the end, right?
We'll get there. We'll get there. So knight takes c6. And now I came up with a nice defensive idea.
How about rook takes c6?
Yes, rook takes c6. And actually, yeah, rook takes c6, and I take.
Queen to b7?
Yes, queen b7. And actually, this is a very, very smart little trick. The big difference is, if you do this, in this order, takes queen b7, take you, rook c1, and sooner or later, taking on c8 will be a real threat. Even if rook d8, now this is a real option of taking.
Because if takes, you get two rooks for a queen.
Yeah.
And your rooks are well coordinated.
Yeah. But rook takes c6, and I think he missed this. That I can switch the ideas around, and I won't take on c6 until it's a pleasant experience for me. So knight g5 takes, rook c1, and black to move and make some headway.
So what
Rook
was
d8.
your thought process for finding this combination? Is it just what you walked us through, that the queen was loose, the knight was loose?
Yes, so that my thought process here was the following. Okay, I have a slightly worse position, at least slightly worse. Now, I want to coordinate better. Therefore, I want my queen closer to my pawns.
Okay.
Now, I have a weak bishop here and a loose pawn on c6. Therefore, I play queen e7 to coordinate. Now, if you lose a weak pawn, that sometimes activates your position. And that's one of the most important things to learn, that sometimes giving away a weak pawn that was always in the way and was kind of holding all your pieces back will give you sudden activity. I'm sure many of you experienced that when you lost one of your pawns, suddenly all your pieces become much more alive. And yeah, that kind of relates what you're asking me if I need to know. Obviously, you need to know how to defend rook endgames. But the most important part is not to be afraid to lose a pawn if you get active pieces. So probably this queen e7 was inspired by that I'm not really scared of losing my weak pawn. I might get some play for it, and it might just be enough. So knight takes c6, and this was a little inaccurate, I think. Rook takes c6, takes, queen b7, and probably this way of taking, he missed. Takes here, and rook d8. And the thing is, he can't untangle so easily. So if he would just move the queen to c2, now I can already take everything, and this is not bad at all for me. I'm not even sure if I'm worse. Or even if I'm worse, I'm just slightly worse. I shouldn't lose this.
Even better.
I might be even better. So he went h4, and I actually made a mistake here. If I would have followed up with a precise idea here, probably I could have drawn the game. In fact, I saw this idea, but I was getting too ambitious. I actually cared a bit too much about the result of the game, hoping to go for more and try to fight and maybe win in the future, but let's be honest, is not realistic. Here I should have been focused on holding the position. Yes?
G6?
G6. And what if they take our pawns?
Then you've got, I guess the position still blocks and I don't know what you do over on the king side, but that would be my thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to trust that you have a blockading position. That's a good thing to have, the confidence that it should be good enough. And to be honest, I'm also confident that this should be fine for black. But if you can take stuff from your opponent, try take all the material that they give you. It should be a hint of how I should continue here. Yes?
G takes h4.
Yes. This would have been much better than what I did. Because, again, he can't untangle, has to take on h4. Now, our next move is obvious. Knight takes c6, rook takes c6. And now I have a nice move. Very nice move. Yes.
Rook takes d4.
Rook takes d4. And, well, when you play these moves on the board, you kind of get this exhilarating feeling of, I'm invincible, there's no check that would punish me. And if you calculate well and you worked hard on your puzzles, it'll show that, yes, there's no way for white to win this, and after this, because of the equal pawns, white will have to settle for a perpetual check. But as I told you before, unfortunately, I became too ambitious and was hoping that, let's have a fighting game and somehow maybe I'll win. Which is not necessarily a bad thing, but in this position, I could have just gone for this line. And to be honest with you, I saw this knight takes c6, rook takes c6, rook d4. I saw this whole line and chose this unpractical decision of continuing the fight, when actually I spent like 15 minutes thinking on this. And we were kind of heading towards time trouble. We moved 26, so that's kind of normal. So I took on c6, which wasn't good. Rook takes c6, g takes h4, and queen c2. And this is a very nice move by Quang Liem. I can't take on d4 anymore, because rook c8. And my pieces are still passive. how would you evaluate this position? If I would give you this as a puzzle and say, okay, you look at this position, who's better, who's worse? Is the position equal? Can anybody tell me? How would you feel about this position? What would be your objective evaluation? What do you think? I had the feeling, so I start first, is that I should be fine. That was my feeling. How would you feel about this position if you were black? Yeah? Yes?
Chances are roughly equal, but it's easier for white to play.
Yeah, I would agree. After the game, I would agree with you that it is easier for white to play, especially because of these active pieces. Now, they're not super duper much better than the queen and this rook, but it's better. So queen c2, g6, and rook d6. To be honest, I don't even know why I don't give this even more credit, but probably this rook d6 gives the most chances for him. And to be honest with you, I think this is the difference between a 2700 player and an average Grandmaster or 2600 plus, is that they find the most challenging moves in dull positions. So in this position, I was quite sure I'm not going to lose this game if I manage to bring my queen to d5. Probably I was correct, therefore he chooses rook d6, so I cannot achieve that at all. These challenging moves usually mean it's not that they're super good, but at least they stop you from finding the most effective plans. So you have to find new ones, and another one, and another one. But okay. Rook c8, queen d3, queen c7, king h2. Not wanting to get into queen c1 checks and queen f4s and queen c2s. And again, I have a tough choice to make here. How to continue my play. One of the moves here is stronger than the other. Obviously, we should invade white's position because we need to find some counterplay. What should we play here? Yeah.
Queen c2.
Queen c2. Okay. Anybody else? Guesses? Would anyone want to play queen c1? In fact, I'll switch it around. What's the difference between queen c2 and queen c1? Yes?
Yeah, and well, white can exchange queens with queen c2.
Mm-hmm. And what would queen c1 try to achieve, though?
Keeping the queens on the board longer.
In fact, yeah? Go ahead.
Perpetual check themes.
Yeah, queen c1 has perpetual check themes. Ryan, you had...
Same thing.
Same thing? Yeah, so queen c1 has these perpetual ideas. So did that convince anyone that they will play queen c1 instead of queen c2? No. So I guess we've all been fooled by wanting to exchange queens. I also played queen c2, and it turns out to be not so good. Queen c1 would be better because of these perpetual ideas and taking on b2. Now, white would stop that. He doesn't want to see a queen on f4. We take a pawn. Queen f6. And what's amazing, that black will need to play something like rook f8. And the computer says confidently that it's a draw. You're drawing. Now, it's not something you do confidently when you have like 10 minutes left. All of those white pieces are attacking your king, and the computer says, draw. It's not a problem. Yeah?
Well, and considering Magnus Carlsen would probably grind this position, trying to find a win, he'd probably succeed.
Magnus Carlsen is a good player, but nobody's better than objective moves. So if the position is objectively equal, you're supposed to hold the position regardless who do you play. With all due respect to Carlsen, I believe that good moves should suffice to defend the position. And that's what I think. I mean, not many could prove it, but I think that's the truth. So Queen c1 should objectively be the best chance and should be holding, but it's scary. And that's what the computer said, and maybe it's not even the objective truth. In fact, in this case, I might even agree with you that maybe Magnus could find the right moves for white in that specific position, coming back to this one, and just find the right moves for white, and the attack would just crash through. I could believe that. But if there's enough defensive resources left, probably I could be able to hold this. But I should have played this one. So I played Queen c2, but then he came up with this very nice idea of Queen e3. Obviously avoiding the exchange. 5. I played a5, which is not great. I again should have taken the pawn. And it's kind of funny, because Korchnoi was famous for taking all these pawns and then surviving. And it turns out that sometimes you should eat lots of pawns to stay healthy. The move here is d5. And I challenge you to find the only move in this position. There's only one move that saves the game. And it's one of the weirdest looking ones. That's why I wanted to show you guys. It's black to move and equalize. So the big threat of white is to take on e6 and just break up the black king side. Yes?
E takes d5.
If e takes d5, I will push on through with the pawn. Oh, no. I would push through and I will just destroy your pawn structure.
And we can't play f6 and then try and throw in queen e5.
f6 is never really a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah. Any ideas?
Queen takes a2.
Queen takes a2, I can still take on e6 and
X-ray defense.
And again, I'll just be too quick with my attack. So we have enough pieces with black. So exchanges would favor us. That's why e takes d5 seems so logical. That's true. There's one brilliant move that saves the day.
Did you find it?
No, this is already computer analysis. I unfortunately didn't find it. But it's actually logical. Rook e8. This looks extremely passive. But if you think about it, it makes some sense. Because if you take, rook takes, if you exchange it off, you don't have enough material left to mate me. And if you don't exchange it, then where will you give me mate? So that's kind of a check, king g7. If you take, then you can't mate me with one queen. So I'm not saying rook e8 is impossible to find. I'm just saying it's not too easy to find in general, especially with a ticking clock. Yeah?
I mean, it may be possible to find if you're one of those players who constantly worry about opponents' threats.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Petrosian, probably you find rook e8 in like a split second. Like if you're more defensive inclined, probably rook e8 is an easy move for you. But otherwise, if you don't relish defending these kind of positions, rook e8 is not that easy. But anyways, that would have been the best defense and the last chance for me to defend this game. a5, and now d5. Queen f5. Obviously, I didn't want to take, because e6, the problem is twofold. If I take, then this should be super duper checkmate. And if I don't take, then that's the problem. And he can just start rolling with all those pieces, even queen e5. Is queen e5 good? Yeah, queen e5 is good. f6, queen takes d5. Rook d8. Let's see. Here, take, e7.
What if instead
Oh, yeah.
instead of playing queen d5, you play rook e? Oh, it's a pin. Sorry.
It's a pin, so I have to play queen e5. So this is very uncomfortable for black. Therefore, I didn't want to take on d5. Played queen f5. Takes, f3, rook f8, rook d7. And now, maybe all is not lost. I think this is the last chance. I have one move to make and maybe hope to survive. Every other move loses. And the move I made was losing, obviously. But what should we play here and hope for survival? Yes?
I mean, the most obvious move seems queen f4. I
Yes.
think that's what you played, but it loses in some way.
No. In fact, you're right. I should have tried queen f4. Maybe it loses, but at least it's a rook endgame and maybe you can hope for something. Obviously, white is better or maybe even winning, but I should have tried to get into this endgame, and this was my last chance. And even if you start counting, I've got plenty of chances to survive. In the beginning, I had a clear equal variation. Then I had this queen takes b2, first queen c1 and queen takes b2, and then queen takes b2, rook e8. Rook e8. So you get your chances. I played g5, but then he found a very nice move. And after that, I'm just completely lost. And if you know what black is planning to do, it's quite easy.
No, he's planning to play queen f4.
Yes, black does want to play queen f4. So how can we stop the queen from moving to f4?
Rook d4.
Rook d4. And basically this ends the game. Because I cannot exchange the queens anymore and my pawns are just too weak. And actually what gave counter chances to me in this whole game was my active rook and queen. Without those, I would be dead lost, and now I am dead lost, unfortunately. Rook g4, just attacking my weak pawn. Also putting the rook in a safe spot. King g6, have to defend what you can. Queen c5, rook b8, just defending. Queen f8, hoping to exchange, but obviously he will not exchange queens. Keep giving great offers to no avail. f4, and it's basically over here, and the game was done. So I've got few chances to save the game. I have a slightly worse from the opening, but you always get second chances if you try hard enough. And I think what I learned from this game is that if you calculate and you set enough problems, you might eventually draw. Or if we're thinking of how he played this game, he was posing problems, enough problems, that his opponent would trip up. And that's how he won. All right, so let's take a look at game 2. And that game is my game against Wesley. So now this was played in round 3. I won the first game in the Under 20 World Championship, drew against a now 26-20 player, Lenic Luka, with white, and then in the third round I was playing Wesley So, who we all know. Now, Wesley So was unknown at that moment. We were playing in 2008, so I didn't know exactly what to expect, although I already heard some news that there's a very talented kid from the Philippines who now plays for America. So I played this very line, which is called the Philidor system. And I was kind of confident when I played this line, because I played this against Hu Yifan. And actually, in our game in Budapest, I was even better and had chances to win, even though it ended in a draw. It wasn't actually a very entertaining game. Now Wesley decided to take on e5. Take. Bishop g5. Recently I saw some players play bishop c4 or even f4 right away. Let's play bishop g5. Now knight d5 is kind of annoying, so I need to stop that. I played c6. Bishop c4. King e8. Now bishop e6 is another idea. Take. And this structure looks ugly, but it's kind of easy to defend those pieces. And even when you would get around with your bishop, you're not doing too much damage because these pieces just defend the e5 forever. I might even go knight h5, take, or just put the knight on f4, yes. Yeah, so these e6, e5 pawns do give me some outposts for my knights and take away yours on d5 and f5. So it's not necessarily that bad, but it's not that I wanted to do that. So I played king e8, knight f3. And this was rare and kind of surprised me because you usually see play with f4 and trying to open up the position. He played with knight f3, which seemed strange to me. I felt that I should have no problems in this position. Knight d7, castle, bishop e7. And here he played a very, very nice prophylactic move. And these moves are the hardest. Yes?
Bishop h4.
Yes. So he wants to keep the bishop, and also he feels that my e5 pawn is a little bit loose, so he can try and attack that. Bishop h4. But then I came up with this plan of knight g4 and f6. Because I felt that if I stabilize the e5 pawn, what will be your long-term plans? White? And I wasn't totally wrong. But again, he played knight d2, which again I really like. So you'll see why. And I think here I made a mistake. Probably I'm still equal here because all the white pieces are quite passive and no f4 ideas really work because I have full control of the e5 square. If you think about this position logically, you might be able to find the correct plan for black. Actually, what's black's biggest dilemma? What would we like to get rid of?
Bishop on c8.
The bishop on c8 is terrible. So let's get rid of that guy. How can we get rid of that guy?
Knight f8.
Knight f8.
And
you
with
can
bishop
be-
e6.
Yeah, knight f8. Or you can get a bit more active.
Knight c5.
Yeah, so you can do knight f8, but why not knight c5? Yeah. I played b5, which is not that good. Knight c5, and the next move being bishop e6. And if I manage to play bishop e6, I'm definitely not worse here. Now I played b5, but here Wesley comes up with a brilliant solution. I mean, I was deeply impressed after the game, and I'm still impressed with this game by Wesley. This next move is very nice. It's not much of a tactical move, it's more like a positional decision.
So there are no bishop takes b5 ideas, or
Yes.
He could go bishop e6 and trade his bishop for a knight.
Yeah. He goes bishop e6, and this is a fantastic positional decision, I think, because he realized probably that wherever he puts the bishop, it does nothing, and it's just a useless piece. So he said, okay, my bishop is not needed for my concept. On the other hand, if your bishop will be missing after this move b5, who will defend all your weaknesses on the queen side? So bishop e6, knight c5, and the main point is that he'll take my bishop this time. Because I already advanced with this pawns, and as we know, pawns don't go backwards. Takes, f3, and probably this was one of the second opportunities I had to change the course of the game. What should I play here? What should I play here?
knight e3.
Yes. I felt maybe a bit too confident with my position, because my position looked very safe, and maybe it's still safe, but it was time to go reckless somewhat. And I mean, if he has to go here, then it's just funny. But if he goes here, takes, here, takes, I still feel uncomfortable with being black here because of these pawn weaknesses. And he will jump around with the knights. I feel I'm slightly worse. I think, honestly, I'm slightly worse here. But I still should have initiated some complications, because you'll see what happens if I don't. So knight h6, bishop f2. Why is bishop f2 such a strong move? Well, it's a strong move because it kind of just shoots at my knight on c5 and also points out that, hey, fellow, you have a weakness on a7. Rook c7, so I had to defend. Knight b3. And look how every move he makes comes with a tempi. Again, I have to react. Now I went back to e6, which I still prefer, although maybe taking c takes, king f7 is a possibility, but this is just kind of easy play for him. He can go king b1, rook c1, rook d1, double with all the pieces, and I'm in for a long struggle. And I'm going to struggle this whole game. So I felt, no, I don't want to make it easy on you. So I just posted knight on e6, which is actually useful because it does control many important squares. So it's not quite clear if I'm just going to go down so soon. Rook d2. And actually, rook d2 might have been a little bit inaccurate. I have a good idea here with black that I didn't do, and probably I should have done. So as you can see, I'm slightly worse again in this game after this b5 move. Just a small concession, and I'm already a little worse. How can I kind of bother white's position? Yes.
Bishop b4.
Yeah, bishop b4. That's what I should have done. And let's say a3 takes. He still has huge control of squares, but at least I exchanged something off. Maybe I go king e7, you go here, I go rook something, or rook knight f7. And am I equal in this position? Definitely not. Am I still fighting? Am I in the game? Yes, I am. But knight f7, he could have played a3 already. He waited a bit longer and still had the bishop b4 idea, played h5. But after a3, I have no more moves left. And to be honest, this really impressed me, that I have all my pieces on the board, yet none of them can move. And this is not the worst. Worst is still to come. g6, bishop e3, h4, h3. So he's not rushing. He's taking away all the possible ideas I might have. So I play f5. And mind you, I'm not playing bad moves. The computer likes my moves. It's just that I don't have enough space. Takes. And here he comes up with a very remarkable positional idea. Which actually will decide the game. I think even here I felt kind of confident that everything's fine. I don't see why I'm losing. But after he found this plan, I wasn't so sure anymore. So White will need to find a square where he could invade my position from. I already covered these important squares, d5, c5, d4, e4, f4. So you'll have to look in other places to actually break through. Yes.
How about knight a2 with the idea of going to knight b4?
Exactly, that's what he did. Knight a2. Obviously, I can't open up the position. That would be suicidal. And I can't stop this knight b4 idea. Let's say I wait. The knight b4. Now if I take, I'm like dying on the black squares. If I don't take, then knight a6 is coming and I'm dying on c5. So with this long range nice plan of a3, knight a2, my position totally collapses. So I played c5, but that's the beginning of the end, because he has a very nice move here. It's simple, but very nice. Now I blocked this b4 square. That's not a problem anymore. But now it jumps back. And now that's a big problem. Because the knight is heading to d5 and then big problems are coming. So knight d4, I'm trying to blockade. f4, he's just destroying my fortress. Takes, e4. And this is the best way you can fight. You're trying to keep the position closed. Because if it's closed, maybe you'll get some fighting chance. But objectively, this is already not good news for me. Knight d5, rook c6, takes, rook d7. Now, knight takes e7 is a great decision by him, saying, okay, I give away this beautiful knight on d5, but in exchange, I get all of my pieces in to attack you.
Don't you also win a pawn?
Yeah. And he wins a pawn, too. Rook g8. I'm still looking for counterplay, and whenever and whoever you're playing, always look for counterplay. So I'm still trying, I'm still fighting, I'm trying to hit on weak spots in his position, but obviously that's not going to work. Knight d6, bishop f2. Now he's rounding up my h4 pawn. Knight c8, still being tricky. Rook g7, but a counter trick. So he wants to exchange on his terms, and even if I would take on a7, he would take my rook, and it would be still bad. Rook d8 takes, and the rest is just agony. Check, takes, king d4. Trying to bank on that lone active pawn, but it's obviously not doing much here, and the rest is just the end. So still trying, but obviously it's just lost. And it's just lost. So in fact, what I learned from this game is don't rush with your pawns. They never move backwards. And if you would manage to exchange that bishop on c8 without actually having concessions, you might equalize. But making few inaccuracies in the end might just cost you a game against a future 2800 player. Thank you.